Welcome back. Now, Simply Larry is a book written by ELIAS MASILELA. It's a story about a Salesian priest who came to Swaziland on missionary work, but took his responsibility beyond just dispensing the Christian faith, but actively contributed to the educational development of many young Swazis, South Africans, and students from the SADC region. A slew of South African leaders came through the tutelage of Father Larry McDonnell. The author joins us now, but as it happens, he's also a previous head of the Public Investment Corporation, PIC. We're not going to go too much into that, but Mr. Masilela, welcome to the agenda. You have been a chief executive at the PIC. Let's just talk a bit about the organization and what it means to the South African public and why it is such a challenge to turn this organization around in a way that is profitable to its clients, who are public servants mostly.
I'm going to disappoint you a bit.
Yeah.
Because I have a philosophy of not commenting about previous employers. But all I can say is the PIC is a very important and systemic institution in South Africa. And whatever it does, it influences the way in which the economy operates and the way in which investors think about the country.
Let's talk about yourself. ELIAS MASILELA, your siblings, you have a very rich heritage in terms of your parents and what they did for the struggle against apartheid and where we are right now. We're going to talk about your book, Simply Larry, but you've written other materials about your heritage and where you come from. Take us back there so we let our viewers understand who ELIAS MASILELA is.
In this context, I'm more comfortable to be described as Umntwana kaMagogo. And this originates from one of the early books that I've written, which is entitled Number 43 Trelawney Park. And the book looks at South Africa's liberation through the lens of Swaziland, through a house which is now known as Number 43, which is the address to the house that almost single-handedly liberated South Africa. And Larry originates from that book. There's a chapter in Number 43 which is entitled The Golden Age of Salesian. And Larry is that person who actually generated that golden age.
Let's talk about the story of Father Larry. He's just touched on it a bit. What makes him special as opposed to any other missionary who could have come to South Africa or come to Swaziland, or the different missionaries who have been through the African continent?
What makes him special is because he's a simple priest, a headmaster of the Salesian school, who we say is an educationist with a heart. And the heart is understanding the value of looking after the lives of boys, converting them into men. A lot of people have gone through his hands, many politicians, many business leaders. One of those business leaders that we can talk about is one of the founders of Netflix. He is also a person who was very instrumental in the liberation of 3 countries in the region: South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. And this he did not through the barrel of the gun. He did through the chalkboard and his Bible. And that's what makes him special.
How did he go about his teachings that made them impactful? And tell us about other leaders, the ones we can immediately recognize. It's incredible that you say the founder of Netflix was one of his students. Who are the other immediately recognizable leaders that we can look at and say it was through his teachings that they became who they are?
His teaching was a very simple approach, that of discipline. And in his mind, the education system can only function or can only work if you have the basic disciplines. As a result, he never allowed chewing gum in the classroom or even in the school. He never allowed jeans at school. So that basic discipline influenced the way in which people or students absorbed education. Now, a lot of the people that went through Salesian were either students or teachers. One of the outstanding teachers that we talk about in South Africa is Stan Mabizela, who was one of the leaders of the ANC in exile and both at home. The other is the first secretary of the PAC. The first name eludes me, but he was Mr. Nziba. And most recently, we've had one recipient of the Luthuli Award, who was a general of the South African Defence Force, who operated from Salesian. So it was a cross-section of people, students who left South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, running away from the stranglehold of apartheid, ended up in Salesian. A lot of teachers who couldn't ply their trade in the three countries ended up in Salesian and were given the opportunity to ply their trade.
How will Simply Larry enrich the South African writing space? When you started writing it, what did you want to achieve, one, but also because of the rich heritage you have through your family, who else do you want to write about in terms of their contribution to the liberation of South Africa?
After Larry, it seems like there's a lot that can be written about people and those who are associated with Salesian over the years. What is interesting is that when we started off on the journey of writing about Larry, when I say we, is because it's a decision that was made by the Salesian Old Boys Association, where they were celebrating Larry, and they concluded that a dinner is not enough to celebrate the work that he's done. And they decided to write a book. And this decision was made in 2009, and nothing happened until last year. And the reason nothing happened is because nobody took the responsibility to take the lead and write. And last year, Larry became quite frail in health, and we're very concerned that he may die before we write the book.
Before his story is told.
So we had to write the book in less than 4 months.
Yeah.
And the main reason for us was to say thank you to him and to the other priests of Manzini, who were selfless in the way. The priests
you mentioned in the book as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Who were very selfless in the way in which they looked after us and raised us, which said to us it is important that we celebrate them whilst they are still alive. And after writing the book, we realized that it's actually not only the Salesian Old Boys that were representing in saying this thank you. We're actually representing the entire Roman Catholic institution.
Oh, wow.
I was sent an article from a newspaper in Dublin, which has a very interesting introduction. It says Larry is an antidote to the scandals of the Roman Catholic Church. And if you've been following what has been happening in there...
I'm so happy you're mentioning that, because as I was looking through the book, I realized there's another story to the Roman Catholic Church, and I wonder if he's immune.
As far as we know, he's immune. There is nothing of a scandal that we've seen at Salesian. It's interesting that you asked that question, because when I handed over the book to Trevor Manuel, he said to me, Elias, are there other Larrys in this world?
Okay.
And I said, I think there are. And for me, and for the people who are behind writing the book, we see Larry as that model missionary that we need to replicate, so as to continue to deliver what they've been trying to deliver over the years. But what is interesting and depressing to him is that 66 years down the line, they've got no one to hand over the institution to. When Salesian was put up in 1952, the hope was to train Swazi priests who would then take over the responsibility and run with.
Yeah.
After 66 years, they've only produced one Swazi priest. And even that priest is no longer in Manzini. He is in South Africa.
Is that a problem with the development of events in our region, or is it a problem with the Catholic system?
I do not know, but the people who trained and ended up not becoming priests seem to indicate to me it's the economic environment, which is grounded in a level of materialism, where we have less and less people who are ready to give out their souls to the next person and want to look after themselves before they can be able to assist. And in this mission, you have to give away your soul entirely, and it cannot be about you.
How did he feel about you preserving his legacy through literature when you first started talking to him?
The subtitle of The Selflessness of Salesians in Manzini is actually described by what he said. When we came to him to say, Father, I would like to write this book about you, he said, oh no, it cannot be about me. I was a mere servant in this. It can only be about the people around me. But we insisted on writing anyway. And what was fascinating is that when we presented the first copy of the book to him on his birthday, September 14, 2018, he giggled like a primary school boy.
And what were his thoughts about the finished product?
He's very impressed with it. He does not believe that
he's not in Swaziland anymore.
He's still in Swaziland.
Oh,
he was
okay.
there for the first launch in Swaziland, and he was in very good health, contrary to what he was last year. And unfortunately today, as we speak, he is almost bedridden. And this almost is a delivery of a wish that he's always had. And this is also part of his selflessness. He gave himself to the Swazi community and the region of Southern Africa, both in life and in death.
Yes.
In the book, he says he doesn't want to die in Ireland. He wants to die and be buried in Swaziland. And when I went to meet him last weekend to tell him about the developments, he was lying in bed, and he calls it his deathbed.
So we're talking about a rich history,
yes.
Things that the Salesian school did through this amazing leader, Larry McDonnell. How did his leadership and the way he taught you impact how you became a leader?
There's a number of things that we've learned from them, and I think I can highlight two now. One of the lessons that stand out is an idiom which was used across the years, across the school. And that is, there are two decisions that you can make in life. And those two decisions are informed by what you understand as values of life. And they say, whenever you have to do something or decide on something, you actually are left with two choices, or you only have two choices. The difficult right or the easy wrong. And he says you feel it in your gut in terms of which route you're going to take. The second one is that of educating a child. And they say educating a child is a calling. And I can identify with it because education was a calling when we grew up. But that's no longer the case today. In the past, when you ask for extra classes, the teachers will be available at night and over weekends. Today, if you ask for extra classes, you get an invoice before you get the hour being delivered to you. So those are the two most important variables for me. And another lesson which I think is important in defining the parallels of our history and politics in South Africa and Ireland is that you cannot divorce the word from politics. His family was part of the IRA. Every member of his family carried the gun in fighting against British rule. He's the only one who did not. And when he came to Swaziland, he thought he had escaped the war or the battle. And he gets to Swaziland, he gets sucked into the liberation process of the three countries that I spoke about. And What that tells us is that you cannot live in comfort when everybody around you is suffering. And that is what he dedicated himself to.
ELIAS Masilela, thank you so much for making the time to come talk to us on this Saturday morning. Other works by the author include number 43, Trelawney Park, Wamagogo, another one, 5 years of retirement reform advice for South Africa, because that's your professional space, and number 43, Trelawney Park, at 50 years, which was released 2 years ago, celebrating 50 years of Wamagogo and celebrating a legacy. An amazing book indeed. Behold a Great Priest, Larry, Simply Larry by ELIAS Masilela. Let's take a look at your weather prospects.